For $20,000, you're making $1,000 of cash flow.
Yeah, sure.
A month, and you look at the return on investment there.
Wow.
It's like cash on cash return. Let's do 12,000 divided by 20,000. You're making making 60% cash on cash return. Yeah. So if you own a home in DFW, it's probably appreciating at 5%. So 5% of a $300,000 property, it's 15 grand. So not only are you making the 12,000, you're making the 15,000.
What are some common mistakes some new investors make in real estate?
Real estate is a very risky game.
Yeah.
If you don't know what you're doing, let me phrase that. If you don't know what you're doing, it's risky. A lot of people think that you can get into real estate
instantly, right?
Instantly. It's a
get
process.
to profit.
Is there any other way that somebody can get in real estate with no investment?
Man, like most people that get into real estate get out of real estate very quickly because.
But nobody asks a question like, how do you stay poor?
You are watching the Fortunate Mindset Podcast.
All right. So I feel like today I want to start with something completely different. As quotes we always bring in the beginning.
Yeah.
So actually quotes that we bring every day are mostly toward the topic that we're going to talk about. But this comes from something that I've been reading during the week. And I was like, okay, let's try this. It says that you will never regret asking questions to get more clarity. And you will always regret making a decision based on a story you have created in your head.
Yeah, definitely. I find myself in that as well, especially asking questions just to get more clarity.
Yeah.
I would say I use that a lot, especially whenever I started in my career.
Yeah.
I think just you may think you know a lot, but the next person may always know something that you don't know.
Definitely.
And they can always shed a light and they can see things in this different perspective. So yeah, it's not always good to lean on your own understanding.
Yeah.
But it's good to always get clarity, ask questions.
Definitely.
That's a good quote.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Fortunate Mindset Podcast. We are so thrilled and excited to have you back today. And please, just let me ask you this. What has been the challenge that you've gone through during this week? And how do you think we can possibly help you overcome that challenge? Please let us know in the comment below. So if this is your first time to listen to us, to watch us, we invite you to join our community where we talk about challenges that youth are going through, either it's in life, relationships, business, or entrepreneurship. And today's guest is an amazing person. I know I always say amazing person, but this one is definitely amazing. Why? Because he didn't want me to say this, but he's a pilot. But it was like, no, I'll give more clarity and more explanation about it. Tell us a little bit about Adam.
Yeah, so I go back with Adam in my university days at Texas Tech.
Yeah.
He has a background in engineering.
Yeah.
Where he also, like you mentioned, he's a pilot.
Yeah.
And he's really versed in the world of real estate.
Definitely.
And that's where we really want to pick his brain today and then speak on that and really real estate.
I mean, everybody right now think like they want to have a house. They want to own a house. They want to have a land. But they don't know where to start.
Yeah.
They don't know how to do it. I remember last time, our first episode, we talked to you about investing in real estate, having different properties, rental and other stuff, flipping, all of the things. But today we have thoughts on bringing somebody who have more perceptive, more knowledge.
Exactly. That's what I would say.
So,
more experience too, yeah.
Man, when I first saw his profile, I was like, oh my days. I'm going to have a home maybe in a year right now because I'm having somebody who's going to give us some good tips.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to the conversation.
Definitely. So introduce.
Yes. So like I mentioned, Adam's a good buddy of mine.
Yeah.
We went to school with together. He has a good experience
Sure.
in engineering as a pilot as well. But
Yeah, sure.
his experience in engineering is in real estate is what we want to dive into. So welcome to the podcast, Adam Moore.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Looking forward to the conversation we'll have.
Yeah, I'm excited to be on this podcast. Yeah, I appreciate you guys inviting me out.
I appreciate you coming. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, of
I mean, first of all, I heard Taylor was telling me that you studied the same university. You have a background in engineering.
And NASA brothers too.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing.
So when he reached out to me on LinkedIn, I want to say like, we had like all sorts of characteristics that were like similar. It was funny.
That's so funny. So, but what gets me curious? I want to know, why are you a real estate investor, not status as an engineer?
Yeah, great question.
Yeah.
Man, just to put it simply, I did not enjoy engineering as much as I did real estate.
Oh my days.
Yeah.
That's the first one. I know, like, being an engineer is a dream for almost every young man, that they want to, because they want to make 5 figures, 6 figures, like want to make a lot of money. But giving it up for real estate, do you think that was worth it doing it?
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah. Man, a lot of people ask me that because I spent 4 years in college committing myself to that. Even in high school, I thought I was going to be an engineer, as well as a pilot too.
Yeah.
And man, whenever I made that switch in my mind, it was kind of like a breath of fresh air of like, you know what, everybody, it's very admired to be an engineer or be a pilot, but I had to take a step back and realize, okay, I'm good at real estate. I enjoy it. I love helping other people. And whenever I made that switch internally, I'm like, man, I feel so much clarity with that decision, and speaking today, like I have no regrets.
That's amazing.
No
That's
regrets.
amazing to hear.
Wow, that's fascinating. I mean,
Appreciate
Good
it.
testimony.
yeah, sure. So what was your motivation? Like, why did you choose to become a real estate investor or a pilot?
So, man, whenever I graduated with my mechanical engineering degree, I had a job lined up with L3 Harris, which is another aerospace company. And prior to graduating, I spoke to a loan officer who told me, hey, you can get approved of a conventional loan that would get you set up into your first house.
Oh, wow.
And I knew that if I got qualified for this loan, purchased the home, and then had roommates, lined up from the engineering company, okay, that could offset my mortgage. Where then I, could theoretically live for free. So I started diving into Bigger Pockets. Brandon Turner, he's a big.
Brandon Turner's great.
Yeah, and then he directed me to one of his books, which is rental property. It's a blue, white, and gold book, but man, that was the first book that kind of rewired my brain into real estate.
And, that's amazing.
So to answer your question, once I got into that house and started renting it out, I saw how lucrative it was to be in real estate, and I enjoyed the process so much, working through the ins and outs of that singular, that one transaction, that it really just sparked my interest. So I don't have any family in real estate. I don't have any. I have a few friends that are real estate agents. And man, I just thought it was really cool.
So it's something that pretty much just came upon you whenever you were graduating, and then you just went to exploit that opportunity, and then from there it just boomed. And then just exploded from there and became a great opportunity.
Okay.
Benefit from you.
That sounds really great. So let bring us a little bit into your pilot world. Like, how does it feel like?
How does it feels good, man.
I mean, not just that one word, being like in that cockpit. Is that how they call it?
Yeah.
Oh,
a lot of people are scared of heights in general.
And being there, flying, all this stuff. So, what do you have in mind when you're behind like all those kind of stuff, lighting buttons and stuff? Like, how does it look like? How does
How
it
does
feel?
it look like?
Yeah.
Man, there's just a lot of, especially when you're starting off, like there's a lot of stuff to memorize. So in the beginning, it's pretty intimidating. You know, like, how am I not going to die? How am I going to get back on this ground? It's like your number one concern. But as time goes on, you feel more comfortable with, you know, communicating with air traffic control or, you know, the control system and everything. Man, it feels good. It feels like you're just completely free up there, you know, like, and I always grew up around aviation. So my dad was an Air Force pilot.
Okay.
So I grew up on different Air Force bases. But man,
That's probably what sparked the interest for sure.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. My dad's a huge inspiration to me in that sense.
great.
Okay.
And, you know, so my intentions prior to real estate was to become a fighter pilot in the Air Force. So that was my clear, direct path. And the best way to go about becoming a fighter pilot is getting your engineering degree or some sort of, you know, Bachelor of Science in something, right? And then 2, get enough flight hours in order to kind of show your, you know.
That's what a lot of people get stuck on. That
It's expensive, man.
expensive, yeah.
It's expensive. It's time consuming. It's hard to do with balancing engineering and being a pilot and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I was able to.
Are you good?
I was able to, you know, go through engineering as well as like the flight training and then other various tasks that the Air Force requires in order to apply to become a fighter pilot.
Oh, yeah.
And so I went down the whole rabbit hole of this, right? And at the very, very end, I had to take a step back because, you know, going back to what I was saying earlier, it's very admirable to become a pilot. It's very admirable to become an engineer, and especially a fighter pilot. You know, that's like, you know, Top Gun. You know, you're up there, man.
Yeah,
You know,
sure,
it's a pretty cool career. But I had to take a step back, and I'm like, is this what I want to do myself, or is it what other people want me to do? What my parents want me to do? Is it what the whole society, you know? And man, it was a hard decision because that's a 10-year commitment into the Air Force. And I knew that if I did not take the chance now and jump into something that I love and you know, wanted to go through, like I'd be regretting it, you know. So
you know, a lot of people do jump into specific careers and they think they're destined for that, but then they end up not feeling like their passion is within that thing that they're doing, and then they end up finding a different passion while they're in that career.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that you found what you really love doing, and you found your passion in real estate, and you know it's really kicked off like you've mentioned. I want to speak about that success a little bit more as well.
Yeah, sure, definitely. Bring us to that success a little bit. Like being in real estate, after you shifting from being an engineer, a pilot, and then go to real estate. So how was it for the first time? How did you feel for the first time? Like, did you start earning your own money by yourself, not working for somebody else?
Yeah, great question, man. I would say in the beginning, you are completely humbled. You know, you go from, I mean, man, in engineering, for instance, I don't know if you knew this, but at the very, very end of graduating, I received an award. It was called the Jim McCauley Award. And it recognizes the most quote unquote prestigious engineer.
Wow.
And that gave me a sizable chunk of money that I was able to apply to my down payment.
Oh, that's amazing.
And so I was coming off this high of like, you know, the university saying, oh, I'm, you know,
good.
I'm a good engineer, you know, and then straight going down to, when I say go down, I mean, you know, just get my real estate license. And a lot of people kind of have negative connotations towards being a real estate agent, just because it's a very easy, barrier of entry into the field. You know, it's like people say like, oh, your career's going down the hole, just get your real estate license and go down that path, you know? So it was kind of like setting myself back in that sense. But man, to answer your question, when you first make that first sale into real estate, knowing that was all, you know, of course there's mentors involved and everything, but you were able to earn that money legitimately yourself. There's no better feeling, you know, that really just blows up your mind.
Complete that deal.
Man. The moment you complete the deal, that's where you feel like, wow, I've made something.
yeah, it's like proving it to yourself. I think everybody needs some sort of validation within themselves, you know, whether it's, you know, for instance, you moving to the United States, you know, we haven't spoke before, but, you know, I'm sure you've had a lot of successes already that you've seen. It's like, as soon as you saw that one success, you're like,
definitely
you proved it to yourself.
Yeah,
you know,
I mean, as you mentioned, it was a hard decision to make. First of all, like leaving all the people that you know, your family, and all that, you know, link you had with everybody else, and then you just move into a place where, you know, yeah, it's promising. Yeah, there is a lot of opportunities. Yes, there is a space where I can earn more, but you don't know if exactly you're gonna make that, because so many people move, so many people come, but they don't really get that much success. Right? You just find themselves like really going so down, depressed, and losing almost everything. So it was a huge move. And when you feel like you start succeeding in a certain area and certain things, you feel like, wow.
right? Yeah,
This
I
is
love
it.
that, man.
Yeah,
That's what it's all about.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so I want to dive in more on your before we dive into real estate.
Okay.
A little bit just on your experiences in pilot. What are some misconceptions that people may have about being a pilot? And so,
Oh man, I guess in what regard? Like,
just in general, like some scares or some facts that some people don't know.
Oh, man.
about just becoming a pilot and just what it takes, really.
yeah, I think a lot of people, you know, are afraid to. You know, it's definitely a dangerous activity if you
Yeah,
don't know what
sure.
you're doing. But what people don't know, I guess, is that there's so much training involved in getting your license, and
Okay.
those instructors make sure that you know your stuff because they're hanging their license on the line too. You know, of course they want to care about your safety, but there's skin
Yeah.
in the game as well for them too.
Right.
So,
Sure.
man, I would say it's actually less expensive than most people think if they do it
Okay.
properly and if they do it quickly.
Oh, okay.
So I was fortunate enough to do it in college whenever I went to tech,
Yeah.
and they had their own aviation program called Hub City Aviation.
amazing.
And I was able to kind of line up the flight time and the instructional hours and
Your
do
classes
my
and
ground
everything.
school and classes all very, very quickly.
Yeah.
And because of that, you know, I'm retaining a lot more knowledge in that sense than somebody spacing it over, you know, 2 years. And I was able to knock it out, I want to say in like 3 months, something very, very quickly.
3 months?
I think it was like 3 months, 3.5 months, and 40 hours later,
Okay.
I was able to get my license. But I was able to knock it out under $10,000.
The fact that you do it recreational too is great.
Thank you,
You can
yeah.
do it just for fun whenever you feel you want to go across the country.
Yeah, sure.
You know, take an aircraft and go. That's good. Is it cost a lot to get an aircraft? Do you own an aircraft or?
So my father is in. He works for Southwest Airlines.
Okay.
So
Oh,
he's been
okay.
a pilot for 40 years now.
Okay.
So we got this, or he got this 1960 Cessna 172
Oh yeah,
out in Nebraska. Me and him
Okay.
flew up there.
and then brought it down here.
And then flew it back.
Wow.
And then, I mean, he has just he's replaced the engine twice.
Oh my God.
He's completely done the inside and outside of the aircraft, like just taking it apart and putting it back together. No, he's a genius.
Is
He's a YouTube professor or like
Oh,
professional.
okay.
You know,
Oh,
he'll just watch YouTube videos and figure it out. And,
to
Yeah.
to fix it like airplane engine on YouTube.
man, yeah. Now, if the FAA is watching, it's not the case. It's not true. What I'm saying is
You're not flying illegally.
okay.
But yeah, man, he's done all that, and so to answer your question, yeah, he owns an airplane that we're able to take out, and you're just paying,
Right.
I would say like $40 an hour when you're
Okay.
out there in fuel. But if you were to rent an aircraft, yeah, probably like 200 or 150, something crazy like that. Yeah,
I got so many questions about that, but I really want to
man.
dive into your real estate experience as well. in
No,
general.
let's get into that a little bit.
Okay.
Before we jump into real estate.
Yeah.
Whereby, you know, there is so many people right now. I have a friend of mine. We work together, and he want to become a pilot. So maybe you might or not watch this video, but in case he does, right?
Yeah.
Why would you tell him, like, where can he start first? Like, or how can he get registered? What kind of step can he get to become a pilot?
Yeah, is he trying to do it professionally or just more
Yeah,
To commercial
professional.
aircraft?
Yeah. Well, in that case, there are like several different. I think it's called ATP school, and
You say ATP?
I want to say it's ATP. Yeah, it's essentially just a fast track program to put him
Okay.
in the professional route.
Yeah.
And you'll be able to knock out your private pilot's license, your what's called an instrument rating, and then your commercial license, and then so on and so forth. To get your ATP in order to fly commercially and regional aircrafts and major airlines. So, man. I would say, look into those sort of programs. I know we have a really good one here in Dallas and Addison.
Okay.
I have a couple friends that are doing that, and they have said great things about it.
Oh, okay.
But I would say if you're trying to do it, kind of like my route of just getting your private pilot's license,
Yeah.
go online. There's training programs out there for like $300.
Oh, 300
$300 bucks, and you knock out what's called ground school. It's like everything that you learn on the ground, in order to be proficient enough to like schedule out your maps and the weather and all sorts of little lessons there. And then talk to a flight school and see what kind of discounts you can get, and seeing if you knock it out in a few months, like, got to give me a discount.
A good deal.
Yeah.
That's really great. Is it funny or is it scared to be a pilot?
Oh yeah, man. I mean, well, let me put it this way: the first time you fly what's called your first solo, flight, where you're just by yourself.
Yeah.
And I want to say I did it like 7 or 9 hours in, something like that. Where
my God.
This is the 7th time I've ever flown an aircraft with somebody else. Like now I got to do it by myself.
Yeah, sure.
Man, you are shake it. I remember trying to sleep the night before, and I was like, oh my gosh,
I'm gonna be in the air tomorrow.
yeah, man, you're up there by yourself, and it's super loud. There's all these archaic controls, and you look down, and you're just 2,000 feet in the air. And you're like, God.
Oh yeah.
It's all on me right now. So
No, that's amazing. That's a good experience. Though.
It's a funny question though. Before actually, this is, I don't know if Taylor has another one, but this is the last one about piloting and the stuff. A funny question. I know it will sound really cheesy to ask this question, but is there any kind of route or road, just as we have here, like in like highway and stuff?
I see. Okay.
There up there when you're there, you have like, no, you don't. You need to keep your lane. Don't go to the right lane. Go to the left lane and stuff like that.
There are like major airlines that do have like certain flight paths that they should take, and that's because they're professional route. You got to have everything concise.
Yeah.
But as a private pilot and somebody that's flying what's called visual flight rules, essentially just doing whatever you want. There are like certain altitude restrictions you have. You can't fly a certain distance. Within the city, and then you can't. There's certain airspaces, right?
Oh, okay.
So like there's what's called Class A airspace, Class B, Class C, and Class D, and it kind of funnels up.
Okay.
And if you enter into one of those airspaces unrestricted, that could put a violation on your record, and where the FAA will come after you. So there's definitely some restrictions. But to answer your question, man, if you're out over open water and you're just flying around, I mean, you do whatever you want. You do it. Yeah, we've gone really low to the ground before.
Oh,
like very low, and it's a cool time, like just over the beach and stuff. So. That's cool. Man.
Yeah, that's cool.
I'll have to take you up sometime. Come down to Houston.
I would love that.
I'm available.
Come down to Houston.
I'm good for it.
Good for it.
I'm up for it.
I mean, yeah, sure. So, if we gotta start with this question, how can somebody get their first rental property?
Oh man, okay, loaded question. Man, there's so many avenues that you can take in this process. But a rental property is, so this is just to clarify, it's a property that they would own, hold on to, rent out for a number of years, and kind of just use that as another way of passive income, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Man, I think the first step is to speak to a professional about it. Somebody that would be able to advise you in a way that speaks to you about the funding. That's a huge aspect of it.
Oh, yeah, that's big.
Whenever you're acquiring for a rental property, traditionally you have to have 20 to 25% down. So quite a bit of money involved in that if you go down the traditional route. Now, there are other creative financing options that we can dive into today, and that will allow you to take on properties with little to no money down.
Oh, yeah.
But to answer your question, man, there's we could be here for hours talking about how to acquire your first rental property.
Okay, that sounds good.
But I would say speaking to lenders, and then also speaking to real estate agents that are friendly with investors.
Do you have to purchase the property, or are you able to lease? Or are you able to acquire different means? Or is there the only method or the main method to buy? Because I think buying is right off the bat is scary for a lot of, especially young people may not have the funds. People may not have knowledge, like you mentioned, or even people who know who to reach out to.
Yeah.
But is that the main method?
So before answering to the question, I just want to ask something to the audience.
Yeah.
So I feel like we need to stop this video here.
Why is that?
No, anyway. So if you give us like 1,000 likes, I mean, it would mean a lot for us, because look at Adam just left all and everything that he had to do just to come and give us some good and really fascinating information on how you can have your own house, I would say, your own places. So I'd ask people to subscribe if it's their first time. And why? Because we have seen like 95 of people that are watching our videos are not subscribers.
Yeah.
So if this is your first time, it would mean a lot for us if you join our community, because we are here to help, to support, and to bring the power and the light in the new generation, in youth, either you are a young man, young woman. So subscribe, either it's in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. That would mean a lot for us. So let's go back to Adam.
Well, to answer your question, man, you can buy a rental property. That's probably the main traditional way to do it. You can, I believe me and you have spoken about this, but like Airbnb arbitrage.
Oh, right.
So you can lease a property and then turn it into an Airbnb. So as long as you have consent with the landlord that you're leasing it for, let's say $1,500 a month, and then your Airbnb being it at $3,000 a month, you can capitalize on that difference. Okay. That's one method to. I would advise not going down that route, and truthfully, it's because you do not take advantage of the tax incentives. You don't take advantage of the appreciation of the home. You don't.
Property.
There's so many other things that you're missing out on when you're going down that route. Now, I've had people that are very successful in that industry, but I would say, for the most part, purchasing properties. Yeah.
Okay. That's amazing.
There's something you've mentioned about the word arbitrage.
Arbitrage, yeah.
So for somebody who doesn't know anything about investing in real estate, like let's say you are explaining to a 5 years old person, what can you explain to them what means arbitrage?
Arbitrage, it just means like you would take over that lease. So this is something that, you know, I would definitely encourage you guys to look more into, or before you do it, because I would encourage you probably to purchase a property. But yeah, arbitraging the lease in that sense. So like I said, you know, you talk to the landlord and you say, hey, you know, this is what I'm looking to do. I'm looking to furnish this place and have it as a short-term rental. You check on your city, check on your county, check on the HOA and everything, because there's a lot of restrictions involved nowadays, especially in DFW with these short-term rentals. But if all the boxes are checked off and you're able to apply your funds to the furnishing of this property and then, you know, renting it out, that's what I mean by arbitrage, like taking it over.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, that's kind of the method I use as well. But the majority of my investments in the future are more engaged on buying and purchasing a property, right? So, like you mentioned, the first step into buying a property. What would you say are the main steps if I do want to purchase a property? First, talk to a real estate agent, or start looking on Zillow, or what would I do?
So if I was starting from ground zero and I'm trying to purchase a property, especially for guys and women that are not married and they just want to have roommates live with them, I think the safest, the easiest, and the best way to go about purchasing your first property would be to speak to a loan officer as well as a real estate agent. Right? You want to speak to this loan officer about the funding. So if you can qualify for what is called a conventional loan or an FHA loan. Those are two traditional routes that you can take where you put very little money down. It's the most cost efficient loan. It's going to offer you the best market interest rate. Whenever you purchase this property, you're able to take advantage of the tax incentives of living in this property. And you're able to, what's called house hack is what I'm trying to go for. So purchasing a property and having 2 or 3 roommates live with you in order to pay you rent and offset the current mortgage. And that's exactly how I would go about it. So to answer your question, loan officer as well as a real estate agent. You know, we can drop links of books that I would recommend.
Sure, definitely.
But man, I think the best point of contact is, you know, somebody that's a professional in your area.
That sounds amazing. So how can we have the knowledge to connect with the loan
officer?
Loan officer, and what are the requirements?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Sure.
So I have plenty of loan officers that I can recommend that I specifically work with. I send my clients to. I do my own loans myself with them. They're not affiliated to me, just people I know and trust, right, that I can send you. But man, to answer your question about getting qualified for this loan, there's several ways to do it. So like I mentioned before, I purchased a house prior to graduating, meaning I had a job offer in hand that had no contingencies. It just said, hey, you're about to get employed, make this much money. And I used my experience is what you need from college, showing that, hey, I'm actually doing something, you know. And I was able to take those two and apply it in order to get approved of this loan. But people that are out of college, all you need to have is a W-2 job. So people that are guaranteed to make money, or like me, I'm self-employed, and I would need 2 years of tax returns in order to show that I'm making money in order to get qualified for this loan. Those are the two traditional ways to do it. There's also what's called a bank statement loan. Bank statement loans allow somebody like me, again, self-employed, I can show, hey, I'm making this much a month. Usually truck drivers is a good example of that. You know, they're making tons of money. But if they haven't been doing it for 2 years, you know, they can't show that solid income. So they can show, hey, I'm making this much, and then the bank, you know, gives you a loan on it. But I would say the best way to do it is that W-2. You know,
W-2.
Like you would be a prime example of somebody can get qualified for, you know, great loan. So
when talking about somebody can have in mind, like, is there any requirement about the amount of money that I have to be making, like per year, per month, or something like that? Because you say, okay, I might say, okay, I got my W-2 that has like $1,400. I have my W2 that I have maybe like 15,000, right?
Yeah.
So should I just bring it to get qualified, or do I need a certain amount of money in my W2 to get qualified to have that loan?
Yeah. So they look at what is called your debt to income ratio.
Oh yeah.
So let's just use some simple numbers here. You're making $100,000 a year in your
Yeah.
W-2 job, right? So, or let's say 120. So it's $10,000 a month.
Yeah.
Yep.
And let's say that you have a car payment or student loans that you're paying off, and that is considered debt. So how much you are paying every month in debt, and then on top of that, how much you're making on the monthly payment towards your house. So like your principal amount, your interest, your taxes, insurance, all that combined is considered debt, right? So you take all those debts and then you take your income, and if you can have a 45% ratio between the two or less, then you can get qualified for that loan.
Okay.
So all that broken down, to answer your question, is like, if you're making 120 a year and you don't have any debt and you're buying a house, it depends on the area. It depends on like the tax codes and everything, but you could probably get it qualified for like 500,000 or so, 400, 500,000.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, no, absolutely. Your income to debt is really what they look at.
Sure. That's great. That's what
So as long as you have your debt to income ratio managed, the funds that you can make or how much you make per year really just determines the kind of property you can get. You wouldn't just be able to get a property that's $800,000 if you make 60
Yeah,
or 80.
yeah. Oh,
It varies, right?
It varies for sure. Yeah, absolutely. So the more money you make, the more they're gonna, trust you on. It's like if you were lending out money, you're like, well, if your buddy's making $1 million a year, you're gonna feel a lot more comfortable than somebody that's like not making much money.
Makes sense.
Now, what I was gonna say about that first house that I purchased out in Greenville, whenever I, moved out of college, I was able to, I now since rent that place out completely.
Yeah.
So I'm able to offset the rental income compared to how much I'm making on my monthly payments in my house.
Yeah.
So that just completely wipes it out. And then I'm able to qualify for another loan.
Yeah. Oh.
So that's what I think a lot of people don't get. And if you're somebody like yourself, if you have a very solid, stable job as an engineer, I highly encourage you to purchase a house and then wait 2 years down the road.
Okay.
Or even, I think you can do it in 1 year, and then purchase another house, turn that into a rental property, purchase the next house, turn it into a rental property, and just continuously do that.
Yeah.
Because at that point, you're doing it a very, very safe and easy way to,
That's an
continuously.
extremely good method that a lot of people don't use. A lot of people don't just think that getting I know there's certain requirements. Like if you get purchase a property, like you just mentioned, you have to live in that property for at least a year before it can become a rental property.
Yes.
Otherwise, there'll be penalties and things that can be
mortgage fraud.
Exactly. So speak a little bit on that. You were fortunate enough to be able to live with roommates where they were paying. But say if you want to purchase a property for investing in real estate, you want to put people in there, but you have to live in there yourself. So having to bridge that gap between a year and then after a year, you can then lease it out to other people. But having to lock it in for a year means that you have to pay the funds every single month in that year.
Yes.
Now, is that can it be overwhelming for an individual to do that in that first year before they can begin investing and making profits the second year?
Yeah, yes. You're saying, if I understand correctly, like purchasing a house for yourself only, for 1 year and then start renting it out.
Yeah.
Instead of like house hacking. Okay.
Exactly.
No, absolutely. You have to look at your own finances and personally decide, hey, is this going to be worth it to me? Because you can buy a $300,000 house right now with current interest rates. You're sitting at $2,800 payments, do you feel comfortable with making $2,800 payments towards your own, living situation? Because, in DFW, you can get a 1-bedroom, 1-bathroom for $1,500 or less.
Yeah.
So depending on where you're at,
right.
So, man, I think that's definitely like a personal, financial, you got to ask yourself, but I'm all about house hacking though.
Yeah,
I
think it's a good
a
strategy.
lot of my clients that are our age
Yeah.
always do that route.
Okay.
You know, buy a home, have roommates, and man, it's just financially, if you look at the numbers, and I'm a big numbers guy, if you look at the numbers, it is like your internal rate of return is ridiculous.
Okay.
On compared to somebody who pays rent.
Pay rent.
You know?
Yeah, sure. So, talking about that, do you make your your friends pay more? Do you share it, like, let's say you 3 people in the same house, so do you divide it by 3, or you just make them pay all the money for you? So what do you do when you try to do that kind of,
Yeah.
or it's kind of secret that you don't want to say?
Well, no, I'm open book here. So
Yeah, sure.
it's really based on your current market. It's not really based on how much you pay per se, because like let's say you're paying $10K a month, which
Yeah.
is ridiculous. But and then you can charge your you can't charge your roommate $3,300 a month, you know, to live in the house. So you have to look at, okay, well,
Right.
what is a 1 bedroom, 1 bath in that area worth, right?
Right.
So let's say it's $1,500, and you're like, hey man, you can live in the property for $800, and you live in a nice house, and you know, I mean, I'd be more than happy to live in that, especially if you have it furnished and everything, you
Yeah.
know. So it's really just coming up with that number that you can agree with your friend or whoever you're renting to. So.
Man, it's great. You gained a lot of knowledge in the last time I spoke with you.
Yeah,
I'm just getting a
absolutely.
lot of knowledge from you, just hearing you and speak on what you're really passionate about. I would say, what are some common mistakes some new investors make in real estate whenever they want to either purchase a house or just get a house to invest? What are some common mistakes that you typically see?
Wow, yeah. I would say a lot of people kind of go through the rabbit hole of YouTube and, you know, the guru programs that say,
Oh, yeah.
you know, you can
Oh,
make, you
man.
know, $100,000 in a few months, which, you know, it absolutely is the case in some scenarios.
Yeah.
And it's very, very risky. Real estate is a very risky game.
Yeah.
If you don't know what you're doing, let me rephrase that. If you don't know what you're doing, it's risky. Legally, if you don't know what you're doing, you can get in some trouble. So I think to answer your question is really just making sure you're working with people that know what they're doing. And the same goes, like, for instance, me, you know, all the time things are popping up that I have no idea how to, you know, take on. So I take it to my mentor or somebody that I know who's done this process before, and they can walk me through it. Because
Right.
there's so many things in real estate that even I don't know that you can really put yourself in a bind, you know, if you do it incorrectly.
Right.
So, man, yeah, I would say, you know, a lot of people think that you can get into real estate
Instantly, right? And then
instantly.
just
It's a
begin to
process.
profit. Yeah.
So, Adam, I have this question that comes in my mind. Like, can you just share any personal story or
Absolutely.
experience that illustrates the challenges or experiences that you have as a real estate investor?
Yeah, that's man, I'm trying to think of a good example here. Well, one I'm going through currently, right? So I locked in a home out in Granbury, Texas. It's a really poor shape home. Like, I mean, it's a tear down almost.
Okay.
I got under contract for $30,000. I am selling it off to a gentleman right now at $45,000, right?
Okay.
So prior to me, this is where people talk about how to get into real estate with no money. This is how I did it. So I put $10 down in order to lock in a contract for this
Okay.
$30,000.
$10.
$10. So $10 to lock in a contract with this owner that inherited the property. And they were going through a situation where they were inheriting the property.
Oh, yeah.
So me working through all the struggles that are involved in, you know, having all the heirs sign off on the deal. It was actually already under contract. I had to speak to the investor to remove them from the contract, and then there was all sorts of little diviots that that I had to go through, and then I had to find what is called the end buyer, somebody that's
Okay.
going to
Actually
accept.
purchase the
You know, I'm essentially assigning equitable rights to another investor or homeowner, whoever wants to purchase this property. So once I assigned it, $45,000, I would essentially turn that $10 fee that I put in, turn it into $15,000 if everything goes successfully, right?
Okay.
So the seller needed their money by a certain date, right?
Okay.
So we cannot change that date, right? The buyer could not get the funds by that date. So what we did is we closed on the property at $30,000. This man gave us a fee of $7,000 of a down payment, right?
Okay.
So now he gives us $7,000. We put the remaining $23,000 into this.
Into the seller's pockets.
Into the seller's pocket. So now the sellers are good to go. They're outside of this now. Now it's between me and that buyer,
the buyer.
right? So I have $23,000 into this. I said, hey, man, if you cannot give me the remaining $45,000 by this date, then I'm going to have to turn it into a $69,000 note. So that incentivizes him to like, man, I got to pay this off. So now it's going to turn into $69,000 paying at 9% interest over 30 years. So I'm like, man, I want my money, but this is what's going to take. So right now we're in a position where he said he was going to get his money at this time. Unfortunately, he did not. So I'm trying to work with him here. I don't want to slap that $69,000 loan on it if he can help it and pay off. So right now we're just in communication of trying to get the money back.
That's an interesting situation in general. I'm interested in where you even find a deal like this. Property like for about $30K, as you mentioned. Where? Because you look on Zillow, you don't find properties like that, really.
Yeah.
But like you said.
So this one's a little bit unique. I purchased the land right next to it.
Okay.
And then that person that purchased it called me up and was like, "Hey, I think the people next to us are trying to sell. You want the house?" So it was a setup for sure. It was really good. But I found that land deal off Facebook Marketplace. You can find some crazy deals. I cold call foreclosure list. That's one method of marketing that I do, or prospecting. And man, it seems as if kind of get it from several different areas. But if I was starting off cold calling, foreclosures, or what's called a divorce list, or a probate, meaning like somebody passed away and somebody else inherited the property. So usually in places that people are going through hardships, you can speak to them and help them out of a messy situation.
So talk about the foreclosure list. What exactly is that for some of the audience, and then for us to be able to understand how you can benefit from the foreclosure properties that are being foreclosed? So it's typically some of them are worn down or in bad conditions, right? They can be in conditions where they can't be profitable. You have to go in and then fix some things up and then then begin to profit from the property, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's lists that you can pull from the county. It's called the pre-foreclosure list. I misspoke earlier. So pre-foreclosure, meaning it's set to have an auction date. Meaning that unfortunately the homeowners are not making their monthly payments to the bank, and the bank has to foreclose on them and is saying, hey, every first Tuesday of the month, there's there's an auction. So the bank can say, hey, we want our property by this date, and people go there and throw out offers and try to bid off the property. But you can speak to these homeowners beforehand and say, hey, listen, you're about to lose your property, you're about to lose all of your equity involved. Like, man, if there's a way we can work this out where you walk away with money, would you be open to it? And then a lot of times, depending on the situation, people are like, yeah, absolutely, I need help. I need somebody to help me. And that's where you can go in and, offer I can give you all cash for the property, or other creative methods that we can talk about later, but just a way to get inside of.
So this is creative financing, right? It's a financing method in terms of how you can persuade the person, or you already have the person's attention in terms of they want the property. They don't want the property no more. They just want funds for the property, right? So what are some creative ways you can be able to acquire a property like that then?
Yeah. So for the most part, you have to go, especially with foreclosures or anybody really in general, you have to go in with the best intentions, their best intentions in mind. Like, how can I fix their issue? How can I help them? And that goes with anything, you know, with real estate. And you kind of walk them through all their options. One, you can say, hey, you owe $100,000 on this property. We'll pay you out $120,000 in order to, pay off the entire loan, and then you can get $20,000 in your pocket. Or this is where I'm getting at with what's called subject to.
Wow.
Subject to the existing mortgage. It's a very taboo term in some areas because a lot of people think it's borderline illegal, but if you do everything completely correct, like it's extremely beneficial to all parties involved. Essentially what you are doing, let's say you have somebody that has a loan at $200,000, right? And the property is worth $300,000.
Okay.
Right? The bank is coming at you saying, hey, you have a $200,000 loan and you're $20,000 behind in payments. So what you can offer to the seller is say, hey, I'm going to take over your $200,000 loan. I'm going to catch you up on payments. I'm going to pay that $20,000 reinstatement fee to get you ready. I'm going to fix your credit. I'm going to do all this stuff for you. The catch is that $200,000 loan, let's say it's at, COVID times where interest rates were 3.5%.
Right.
So now you're inheriting a property, or you're taking over property for $1,500 payments.
Okay.
Every single month. You purchase the property for essentially $20,000 cash.
Yeah.
And now you own a $300,000 asset.
Okay.
So the benefits behind that is the seller gets to clear all their credit, free their name of, any debt that they have. They're able to move out of the property, and you can help them find a rental or whatever else. The bank's happy because now they're like, well, if somebody paid me off, I'm getting my money now, so I'm not gonna mess with this situation. And then for you, you're taking over a $1,500 payment. Then now you can rent out this property at $2,500.
And then
So
profit
now,
from that.
so now you're taking, for $20,000, you're making $1,000 of cash flow.
Cash flow, sure.
A month, and you look at the, return on investment there. It's like cash on cash return. Let's do 12,000 divided by 20,000. You're making making 60% cash on cash return. And then we're not even going to get into the appreciation of the home. Right. So
over
home
the years.
So if you own a home in DFW, it's probably appreciating at 5%. At it's just a hot market, right? So 5% of a $300,000 property, it's $15,000. So not only are you making the 12,000, you're making the 15,000. And then there's tax incentives involved in that too.
Sure.
We won't get into, but when you're coming out, over 100% ROI.
All of this just from purchasing a property.
So
these are there's a lot of benefits into just owning a property in general.
Sure.
Where would you find deals like this? Where can you
foreclosure
Foreclosure
list. There's a lot involved in this, and I highly encourage you to look at Pace Morby. That's a really good racehorse. He's like the king of creative financing. He runs a whole organization that's called Sub2 Community. And I'm actually going to meet up right after this with people like that.
Okay, that's great. I
That's
mean,
nice.
From that, I heard you talking about people that say you can technically make money from real estate without investing or anything. Just as the story you've just shared of you just put in $10, but at the end you end up adding 23,000 more for getting the property to keep it and waiting for the buyer to pay out. Is there any other way that somebody can get in real estate with no investment? Because if you look at right now on almost all social medias, especially YouTube, you see all these gurus tell I can show you how to make 100K, 200K with no investment. All you need, just invest or buy my course or anything like that. And they're talking about technology and all of this stuff. So if you can bring us inside, how do you think technology gonna impact the real estate industry?
Yeah. So, kind of tying your questions together here with no money down. There's a concept called wholesaling, and that's what I essentially did on the property that I was talking about.
Yeah.
Now that ended up being, a whole mess, and I did have to put money into it. But typically, you can get a property under contract for like, $100,000, and then you can sell it off to an investor who is more than happy to pay $150,000 for that same property.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you're taking it under contract, putting that $10 option fee down to lock it in, and then assign it over to somebody that's willing to pay $150 prior to it even closing, right? So you're making a $50,000 no fees attached, anything, $50,000 in your pocket just at the closing of the sale. So that's how people get into it with no money down.
Okay.
Now, you asked about the technology involved in that.
Yeah, sure.
So, of course, that market is very, very flooded. There's tons of people doing it, tons of people that are, that's a full-time career. It's not, they're dabbling in it, So I want to give an example of my buddy Jackson. He started, 4 or 5 months ago in the same networking investment community that I'm in.
Yeah.
And he's 20 years old, just very entrepreneurial, like very driven person.
Yeah.
He just started knocking doors every single day on the pre-foreclosure list.
Yeah.
So technology-wise, what he did was he had a system that, a website, a service that pulled the pre-foreclosure list, right? So it took all those people that just popped up on the list.
Yeah.
It had all their names, all their information, email addresses, cousins' names, everything. I'm telling you, right? Everything.
Even cousin's name?
Even the cousin's name, man. And some, you know how it is. Like sometimes they're going to be inaccurate, but for the most part, the information on that person. And then it tells you the underlying principal balance, man, and how much they owe on the property and the mortgage information, all that. And then he was able to dissect that list, put it into what is called a straightaway. It's just a website out there that kind of GPSs you to each location the most effective way possible. He put in like 30 to 40 addresses in there that just got popped up on the pre-foreclosure list all around DFW and just hit up every single door and spoke to all these investors. And he did this every single day. And then as soon as one of them got under contract, he keep in mind, he's 20 years old, doesn't know anything about real estate.
Yeah.
Brought it to somebody who did know what to do with it. That person got it assigned to another in buyer, we talked about. The kid's made over $100K like in a month. And then probably like, I don't know how much he's making now, but I think he just closed on a deal that made him over 200. So like this kid's 20 years old. I'm seeing it firsthand, like, you can make some money in real estate if you do it correctly. So
there's good methods.
But you've mentioned that it has a website, all this stuff, technology. Is it the one who has built all this website, or he got it from somewhere? And if anybody else can access those websites or those places that you're talking about?
Yeah, he did not build it. No. So it's called a Real Estate IQ. That's one website. And the cool thing about that is, man, you can plug it into, I'm sure y'all have heard of it before, but like what's called like dialing services, like one I use is called Smart Dialer. You essentially put in that entire list, thousands of people in there, and boom, it just starts calling 6 people at a time. So like if one person picks up, then you can kind of give your spiel and like try to help them out. But that's how you run through an entire 1,000 people within a couple hours, So man, people have this dialed down with like technology involved.
That's amazing.
Stuff. Did I answer your question?
Yeah,
Sorry,
that sounds good. Yeah, sure.
Sweet.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, let's speak a little bit in regards to if you were to start it to purchase another property. What would be some of the procedures you would take? What steps would you take from beginning all the way to the end in getting the property and then closing on the property? And then from there, and then even continue on and putting it out and beginning to invest on the property. Yeah,
so there's multiple ways to get into the property, kind of like what we've already discussed. But it's just a traditional route of getting into real estate is like
In terms of just evaluating the property and then making sure it's a good deal. Making sure everything is good before you make the decision.
Okay, so I think a lot of people like to learn about fixer-uppers, like properties to purchase and then fix up and then either flip it or like you talked about, like just renting it out. So I would say in the beginning when you're looking at a property, you take what is called the after repair value, ARV. That's essentially the property itself completely fixed up to your liking, what you plan on doing it to, so granite, countertops or, nice new floors, painted wall, everything all looking good. That depends on the market. You don't want to just completely deck out your place if it's in a community that's not as like nice, but if it's like, so anyway, sorry, you take that value, let's say it's $500,000, right? Then you multiply that number by 70%. This is just a common rule of thumb. 70%. So 500,000, 70% of that, $350,000, right? And then you subtract the I did the math right? Yeah. And then it's been a while since I've been an engineer, so I don't know how to do this anymore.
No, you're good.
Man, it's $350,000, and then you subtract the repairs that are needed in order to get it up to that ARV. So let's just say in this case, $50K.
Yeah.
So in order to make this like a good buy, you need to buy that property for a $300K.
Okay.
$300,000, because if you do the math and everything, let's say acquiring the property and closing, there's costs associated with closing on a real estate deal. There's costs associated with selling a property. There's costs associated with holding on to a property, paying your loan over and over and over again. That the contractors, it's going to be $50,000, but it could go over, so $60,000. And you take all of those expenses away, and what you're left with, in this case, could be, a $50,000 or $70,000 profit. So that's how I go about like evaluating fix and flips. But when you go about like rental properties or subject to transactions, it's a whole nother beast of looking at like, how much are you putting down, how much the mortgage is going to be. But yeah, did that answer your question? Or?
Yeah, certainly. You also mentioned something that's pretty that I think a lot of people aren't too familiar in terms of selling a property. The fact that if you have a property that you already own and now you want to sell it, so you can gain the equity that is appreciated. There's costs associated to that. People don't really know about that. We'll talk about the costs that are associated. What kind of things can you expect to pay in terms of taxes and other things that you would have to pay once you already have the property and you want to sell it?
That is a question, man.
Yeah.
I mean that.
Because I used to think it's nothing. There's nothing. You own the property already, and you want to just sell it. There's nothing you're gonna have to pay. You're gonna make the money.
So, man, a general rule of thumb is like 8% off the sale of the house.
Okay.
So, when you're selling, let's say a $500,000 house, if you would like to sell it with a real estate agent, you have to pay the listing agent a certain percentage. Typically, it's 3%. And then you're also responsible for paying a buyer's agent commission. So as a buyer, and that's something I left off earlier, as a buyer, getting a real estate agent is completely free to you. You 100% should use one, because if you do it by yourself, one, you're going to kind of screw yourself if you don't do it correctly. But two, you're not even paying for it, so might as well. Now the seller, they're the ones paying for both agents, which could be 6%, and then closing costs associated with it. That's like expenses with the title company, which is where they close on your house. Sometimes the buyer needs a survey. Sometimes they need a title policy, which ensures clear and equitable or marketable title whenever you transfer it over to the new buyer. There's fees associated with property taxes, like you mentioned, and everything. But yeah, man, to answer your question, probably around 8%.
Wow.
Now, you mentioned the taxes involved, right? So let's say, for instance, you were to purchase this property by yourself, as a primary residence to live in, and you're renting it out. So here's what's really cool about real estate and why everybody loves talking about the tax advantages, right?
Yeah.
That's true.
You purchase a house. If you're living in it for 2 out of the past 5 years, the capital gains that you make on the
Yeah.
difference between the basis of what you're purchasing it for and what you're selling it for and all the expenses removed, as a single person, you can make $250,000 worth of capital gains paying zero taxes.
No way.
Zero.
Let's dive in that. Let's dive into that.
Let's get into that. Like,
How is
how
that?
can you do that?
How? It's just a way the government incentivizes home ownership.
Okay.
So that's probably the biggest factor. But if you're married, you can get up to $500,000 of completely tax-free gains.
That's for 2 years and living in the property.
Yes.
And then you're able to capitalize on the benefits of if you're married 500,000, if you're single 200,000.
250,
250.
yeah.
So what happened after 2 years?
So after 2 years, let's say you're renting it, like right now, that property in Greenville, I don't live in anymore, but I lived in it for 2 years. And now this year, I'm not going to be living in it. Next year, I'm not going to be living in it. The last year, I got to make a decision. Okay, well, should I sell it to take advantage of those completely tax-free gains, or should I hold on to it to let it, accrue over time?
Okay.
So if your home is appreciated $250,000, I would
much
probably
money.
cash out,
Yeah.
cash out and move on to the next deal. You know?
What if you
okay.
pass the 5-year gap?
If
wanna be
you
able to-
pass the 5-year gap, that's where you're probably.
you're gonna have to pay taxes. And,
Yeah, I've never dealt with
Yeah.
it before, but I'm sure it's like you gotta.
I see.
Oh yeah. So tell us what's the biggest risk?
The biggest risk in real
like
estate.
in real estate.
Oh
as in
man, there's so many. Yeah, there's so many. I mean, like for instance, the deal I was telling you about earlier in Granbury. Whenever the title company closed on the deal,
Yeah.
they completely forgot to take. They completely forgot to take out the last 10 years of taxes were not paid for by the current owner.
by the current
my
owner.
God.
So it was over $6,000. It was a small property, keep in mind, but it's over $6,000 the title company forgot about, right? So what I did, and I do it for every single property, and everybody should get it. It's called title policy.
Yeah.
That title policy protects you if something like this comes up,
Okay.
and there's a $6,000, taxes they forget about.
Yeah.
Well, you're completely protected because you bought insurance. So you bought title policy insurance, and right now I bought the property, and I feel comfortable about it because the taxes are going to have to be taken care of by the title company because they messed up. But yeah, I'm sorry. Going back to like just the risk involved, man. Like most people that get into real estate get out of real estate very quickly because they mess up the first deal.
Yeah.
And I think that's getting into your first deal is very important because you learn so much about it. Even if you don't make a ton of money,
Yeah.
it's like okay, well at least I learned it. It's like
Right.
it's like buying into a college tuition. It's like okay, I'll learn how to do it, and I can take that knowledge
I
and
gotta
use it
apply
somewhere
it.
else. Right. But man, you can really like, for instance, a fix and flip. That's like the most common thing. You buy it for too much. Buying it for too much is probably the biggest mistake people make. Because it's like people, we're itching to get a deal. You're like, I want to get into real estate. Like it sounds really good, and then you just pull the trigger on the first thing that comes across your desk, and that's whenever you put in all these repairs, all this expenses, and then you end up, losing out.
Talking about financing and other stuff, let's talk about like how much does a person need to start in real estate, like to start investing, as in owning a house, as that's what the advice you're giving. You don't advise into doing short-term renting and all of this stuff. So how much does a person need to start investing in real estate?
Yeah, and the same thing on just to add on to that question, you can also elaborate on the differences. I know you touched on this earlier, FHA and conventional loans,
Yeah.
and other loans that are also out there. So apart from just individual funds that someone can have, what are financial options that are available for people?
Definitely.
Yeah, so like the traditional route, like you're talking about with conventional FHA,
And then just initial funds as well.
yeah, it's like FHA is 3.5% down. So what that means is, you have a $100,000 property, you're putting $3,500 down into this.
Yeah.
But there are also what is closing costs associated with the sale, right? So you're paying for the title policy, you're paying for the survey, you're paying for all that. That could be 3% of 100,000. So you're walking in into this property with paying 6.5%. Here's how you kind of offset this, and a lot of people don't know. And whenever you're submitting a contract, you can ask the seller to pay for your entirety of the closing cost. So it's called in the form of seller's concessions.
Okay.
And right now, I'm under contract on a house right now where I'm bringing 5% to the table.
Yeah.
And I'm having the seller pay for the entire closing cost associated with everything. They're paying everything. So I am only responsible for that 5% down payment. So FHA 3.5%, conventional you can put as low as 3% down. 5% is probably encouraged because the interest rate gets a lot higher. So like you want to put in at least 5%, I would recommend, and then all the way up to 20%, 40%, 60%. So man, yeah, if you're looking at like a starter home in Dallas Fort Worth, like $300,000, I would recommend to put have at least $15,000 at least saved up. Because when you get into it, you have to make the monthly payments, furnish the house, whatever else is associated to it, so yeah. Does that help? Like 3%, 3.5%, somewhere around there?
Yeah, like
it's like the bare minimum.
That is like 3,000. You give 3,000, and then with all the costs that you associated with, that makes like 6,000. So that can be a good amount to start with, right?
Yeah, would generally, like you mentioned, that's for a property that you want to live in. So now a property that you want to invest in, you have to put at least 20%.
Dude, yeah, it's 20%, 25%. It's called a DSCR loan.
DSCR,
and they look at the property itself more so than like as the investor. But man, you can get into deals with a private money lender. So if you have like a family member or somebody that just says, "Hey, I really trust you," they want to provide the money for the deal. You can do that. I have somebody right now. I just closed on a house out in Fort Worth where the lender provided 95% of the entire deal, including the closing costs. So I brought $6,000 to the closing table, and it's a fully rented out property. It's already been rented, covering the mortgage, covering all that. But yeah, you can even get as low as $0 down, if you're creative enough.
That's really great, and brings me into this quote that I read, and I can read for everybody here. It's like rule number 1. Never go back to less just because you are too impatient to wait for better.
Wow. Yeah.
That's a good quote. Yeah.
So what do you think about that quote?
Man, it kind of goes back to what we were saying with like, pulling the trigger on things that, or I'm sorry, like more so like engineering related, right? Yeah. Man, knowing what I know now and like, kind of like we were talking about with taking risk and kind of elevating your life through calculated risk. It's just, man, I could telling you today, like I could never go back to engineering because knowing that I have such a passion for real estate now and I'm helping people all the time. That's like I think that's what drives me the most. It's like I'm learning all this information. I'm able to share it with you guys. I'm able to share it over as like a real estate agent. And man, it feels so good. Very rewarding when you can make other people money.
Can you talk a little bit about equity? Building equity. It's a portion of real estate where people don't really understand a little bit. Can you describe it, and can you talk about how you can gain equity and appreciation of property, and how you can use that as leverage for a lot of other things?
Yeah. Equity is essentially how much the property is worth subtracted by how much you owe on the property. So if you have a $300,000 house and you have a $200,000 underlying balance that you're making payments on, you have $100,000 of equity involved. Now, the great thing about equity is like, if you cash out, you can collect all that in the form of liquid cash.
Right.
Or you can take, you can refinance the loan, meaning you come back to the bank and say, hey, this property's worth $300,000. I'm fine with leaving 5% down into the home, but I want to take out all my equity. Meaning, you know, on a $300,000 house, you leave $15,000, and then you make the difference between, you know, you get $85,000 back in your pocket.
Liquid funds?
Liquid funds, yeah.
Wow.
But then you're taking on a higher debt. Now, here's the beauty behind refinancing and taking out your $85,000.
Yeah.
You're not making that money. Like on the government, whenever you're reporting your taxes at the end of the year, you're just taking on more debt. You're not taxed on that money.
Okay.
So you can just keep on, 10 years later, refinance, take out all that money, refinance 10 years later, and you're just constantly taking out money, and you don't have to sell in these properties. So that's kind of the beauty behind it.
Adam, how many properties you own right now?
Man, I get lost sometimes. I bought 2 last month. I'm buying one in a few weeks.
Yeah.
I own the Greenville one. I own the one out in 2 out in Granbury right now. And then, man, I'm slowly starting accruing more and more.
It's amazing.
But
your portfolio is great,
man. That's really great. I mean, I know we've already gone too far. We're talking about tax. We're talking about finance. But let's go a little bit back, okay? Let's be like, do it a step back a little bit. I believe that you didn't start in real estate by yourself. You mentioned something about mentor and all of this stuff. Can you just bring us into knowing how important it is to have a mentor?
yes.
In order for you to start in real estate?
It's impossible to not have a mentor.
Yeah.
I mean, you can do it. You're going to hit so many, issues down the road, you need to have mentors. So I have a mentor for my real estate agent business, somebody that brought me on and was like, hey, this is the ins and outs of how to do it and how to help other people and go about it that way. I have 10 different mentors in the investment space. And then whenever I got into real estate, I had 2 really close friends that they were both in different markets, but they were able to share their experience as an agent. And that kind of encouraged me to get into it. And they were just always just pumping out more and more information to me. And man, it's so important. It's like anything, within engineering or
just
being
in general,
a pilot
as well.
in general.
Yeah, mentorship I think is extremely important. Just to start off, it helps you just mitigate the risks and just try to reduce the risk that you can take, because investing in real estate, investing in general is the risk that you're taking with your fund, with your money. But if you can minimize that risk as much as you can, it's always good. And one of the ways you can minimize it is by leaning onto a mentor that already has the experience that you're looking for.
So, because the only reason I'm asking that question is because we've got a lot of information out there, and especially today with social media and all the video we having, you find people go just study on YouTube how to invest in real estate, how to become an investor, how to become a real estate agent, and all of this stuff. So that's why I wanted to ask that question personally, to really make sure like somebody don't just feel like I have to start making money in real estate just after watching some videos on YouTube.
Yeah.
They might not be like your father who just know how to fix an engine after watching a video on YouTube.
Yeah.
So that's the reason why I was like, okay, can a person start without having a mentor?
Yeah, I mean, they can definitely start, getting into reading books, and I could talk about Brandon Turner, his podcast too, all sorts of deals. But I think the best way to learn in real estate is just by experience. I'm telling you, you can read all the books, you can look into all the YouTube videos and podcasts, but until you actually do it. So this is what I recommend. One, having a mentorship involved, but the way you provide value to that mentor is by bringing them deals or bringing them, something of value to help them in their business, right? So, for instance, I have people, and I do it myself to other people that are above me, I bring them deals. I bring them deals like, hey, what do you think of this one? Do you think we can work on this together? And we typically do them 50-50. So where they're doing this side of it, they're providing the value here. I'm providing the value of bringing the deal and like walking them through it, or having them walk it through me or to me. Man, so that's how I would say is like you got to learn through experience, really, because you can read all the self-help books and all sorts of real estate until you're actually, met with a tenant that's not going to move out, and you got to evict them. That's whenever you really learn, how
Actually,
to go about
saying about that, I just remember because I listened to this podcast so much. It's called the Modern Wisdom from Chris Williamson. He says something that's really got to me really personally. I don't really know how I can state it correctly the way he did it because he did it so amazingly to the point. Like, he says, fantasizing about doing the things is not doing the thing. Getting yourself reading all the personal growth books about doing the thing is not doing the thing. Trying to visualizing about doing the thing is not doing the thing. But doing the thing is actually doing the thing. I don't know if that makes sense.
That's
because
a great
you
quote.
can try to be you read books, you start like planning, you start doing other things. It's not actually starting investing, but investing is actually when you start investing.
Yep.
So, on that, what is this misconception that you think so many people have about real estate? That you think like as long as you start making money, or you should wait for so long to start making money, or how does it go?
Yeah, I think that's a big misconception, of like people thinking they're needing a ton of money to get started, or they're needing everything to line up. They're, sure, yeah, if you're going to quit your job and go completely into real estate, sure, you should have, X amount of months saved up in order to, have a safety net there in case you need to go back to your job. However, man, it is... Jackson, I think my buddy, is a clear example of that. The guy just went straight into, completely unrelated to real estate into it and just made that much money just by devoting his entire days into knocking doors, right? So he didn't go and read self-help books. I'm sure maybe in the past, I don't know, but like he just went straight into it. He said, this is the only way I'm going to learn is go out and actually knock on the door, meet these homeowners face to face, and see if I can figure out a solution for them. That's the only way to do it. And anything in life is really just full send it. You really gotta
Definitely.
So man, analysis paralysis is a thing. Looking
you.
over a deal.
I'm telling you.
You're like, man, I do it myself. I'm guilty of it too. I'm looking over a deal and I'm like, dude, I have no idea if I should pull the trigger on this. It's a lot of money, or like. It's going to really, this is risky, but if you're calculated and you know what you're doing, you have the right people involved and you're following the right process, you're going to succeed. 100%.
Talking about that, having the doubts of investing, you might say, okay, I want to start investing right now. Say, I want to start I want to get myself in real estate, but you have this, I would say it's fear.
Yep.
Oh, doubt.
Limiting beliefs.
Definitely. Yeah. And then telling yourself, that's it gonna work? Is it gonna work? Is it worth it doing it? So how do you overcome that doubt and fear when you want to invest into a property or in something that you want to do? So then you have this thoughts, this voice coming in you. Hey, Adam, you need to be more careful about this. Hey, Adam, maybe this is not your deal. Hey, Adam, no, maybe this is not yours. So how do you overcome that voice, that fear, that doubt that gets in you?
I would say, first off, a lot of times your gut is right in certain instances. You don't want to get yourself in a certain situation.
Yeah, sure.
But with overcoming doubt and fear involved, wow, that's a great question. I think that there's a difference between the way winners think and people that don't want to take that risk. And I think there's a clear separation between the risk tolerance within winners.
Definitely.
And if you want to win in life, you have to take
risk.
Calculated risk.
Calculated risk, definitely.
And that's there's not a single transaction that goes by unless it's just clear and obvious decision that I'm just a little bit nervous, right? It's going to go south this way. People like your family or close friends, they love you. They want to take, they don't want you to fail. So they're going to tell you, hey, really be careful about this, really be careful about that. And while they love you, they don't understand that that's the risk you have to take in order to become successful. Man, yeah. So you just got to send it sometimes. I think that's that's the answer.
That's good.
That's
I think
great.
experience
I
is always the best teacher in many aspects. Like
I love that.
That's good advice.
That's really cool. So, thank you for being with us until this moment, for sure, because we are really loving this so far. We are getting to almost the end of this podcast, and a lot are coming. Really, a lot of things are coming really soon. We are going to be introducing something pretty soon that we will talk about it more. But Adam,
Yeah.
what is the kind of thing that you think like people value the most?
The most?
Yeah, like people value the most. But to you feel like it's not where they should be, or it's not the thing that they really should be valuing.
Money. I think money is something that is a very, very important aspect. It's a tool that I feel like it's not something that you should worship by any means. It's something that adds on to your life, right? So we're kind of in the stage. We scroll Instagram all the time. People are doing really big deals, or they're crushing in whatever field they're in. You're not doing enough. Your net worth needs to be X amount at this age. All this stuff. But man, take a step back. You got to understand, like you're in your own path of your own success, right? And I think people get wrapped around certain things in their life, right? So I think people should be very, very passionate about making money too, passionate about their family, forming relationships with others, and your fitness, your relationship with God, your relationship with other people is what truly matters. So to answer your question, man, I think people get wrapped up in money and instead of like the overall picture. And I think I do a very good job of kind of looking at the big picture in life instead of like with engineering or being a pilot. I had to take a step back. Even to this day, I'm looking at my career paths and I have to reanalyze every month. And I'm like, is this what I should be doing, or should I switch into something else that could potentially, take that risk in order to progress myself forward? So, man, I think people get wrapped up in certain things. I think you really have to look at the big picture.
Man, that's a good point you bring up. I was reading this book, the psychology of money. The fact that money can influence decisions, it can influence relationships, it can influence a lot of aspects of life. Money has a lot of power.
Sure.
So how you use that can either make or break you. It really, you have to you have to manage funds correctly, and you have to know exactly you have to overpower money and not allow money to overpower you.
That's powerful.
That's powerful.
But, yeah, I really love that book in general. But that's a good perspective that you brought up. That's a good point.
That's really great. I love that. You mentioned something that just triggers me.
Yeah, please.
So, do you think like without God you would make it to the point where you are?
Wait, I'm sorry. Repeat that question.
My question is like, do you think like without God you'd make it to the point you are? Because you mentioned God, that's why I'm bringing it back.
Yeah. So the question is,
do you think that to the stage where you are at, right, successful as you are, do you think like you would make it without God?
My beliefs behind it is no, I would not be anywhere close to I am without God. Yeah, 100%. You know, even with back in engineering, when I won that award, I tell everybody, I'm like, there's no way I would have won that award if it wasn't for God. And I can go into the backstory of like, I don't know how it kind of came about, but by the grace of God, I won that. And that's what developed me into, you know, having the down payment in order to get in real estate. I think God puts me, you know, people like, you know, Taylor on like, you know, like into my life is like
Likewise.
you know, it's just incredible what I've seen, like God's work in that area. Yeah. So I contribute a lot to God.
That's really great. Then that brings me to ask you, what is the best advice that you've ever heard, received, or given?
Wow. Man, that's a hard one, man. I would say, man, it kind of goes back to like just looking at the big picture of life. You know, there was like a study in Harvard that was talking about, I think it was Harvard or Stanford, where like what makes someone truly happy, and it was like a 77-year study within men, and like what's the true meaning of life, or like what brings the most happiness and joy. And whenever they looked over all sorts of factors of all stages of life, it boils down to relationships. Your relationships you have with God, relationships you have with your family, your wife, your husband, and your kids. And I think if you put that into the center of your life, even in business, you know, relationships you have with others, especially in networking of real estate, you know, and you truly pour into other people and you're providing value to others rather than looking at your own personal like gain. Man, you're gonna do great in life.
That's really great. And what would you define as the most challenging part you've had in your life, and how did you overcome it?
Wow. I think one of the most challenging moments in my life was whenever I went into Texas Tech, and I came in with an Air Force. It was a ROTC scholarship, you know, because I was planning on, you know, joining the Air Force. And I had a full ride scholarship set up for that for the entire 4 years. You know, I was going to be at Tech. And I had a medical disqualification that did not allow me to be in that program anymore. And whenever I was hit with that, it really just, you know, that's financially, tough. I didn't know what to do at that point. But then it opened up the doors to join. I joined a Christian fraternity whenever I went to Tech. And there was a lot of other programs that I got myself involved in. And I think that was another thing that God was saying, hey, like, man, you know, you need to go down this path. And like just opened up another door.
Did they revoke that scholarship from you, the ROTC? Because of the disability you mentioned? Or is it?
Yeah.
Oh, my God. I didn't know that.
It was over like, you know, the Air Force is very particular about their medical standards, especially if they're going to give you full ride scholarship or put you to that program. So even in becoming a pilot, you have to have like, you know, certain vision, certain things like that.
Certainly.
You know? So, yeah, it was like over some BS, but, you know, it just.
All right. And the last question is, what is the worst advice that you've ever heard, received, or given?
Imagine giving bad advice.
Probably something I've given. I'm honest, you know. I probably said some bad advice. But man, I think that, you know, especially when I was getting out of engineering, it's a very high level job that's going to be very stable. You know, people were saying like, yeah, and you're so dumb for doing that and stuff like that. And it just goes to show you like, you know, if you do not take risk in life and you're being comfortable your entire life, that's like the biggest risk of all. It's, you know, you're sacrificing so much happiness, so much in the tank. You're doing your family a disservice, other people around you a disservice by not taking that leap. So yeah, man, I think a lot of people just stay in their lane and just, man, you gotta take the risk wherever you're at in life. You know, I saw something today. It was like, you know, you can have your entire life like completely comfortable living, and you like everything's set up, your family's going well, everything, the living situation and all that, but you got to force yourself into uncomfortability. And the way I do that personally, I do some crazy just athletic challenges of my own just to put myself in that position of uncomfortability. So like, running very, very long distances or doing something in the gym, like you always have to be creating that uncomfortability in order to grow. Cause like you die within comfortability,
You die, yeah.
Yeah.
That's
That's
great.
powerful.
So that's really powerful. And then we are going to close this episode with this 5 harsh truths about life. And for anybody who made it until right now, you'll tell us what you think about it. Number 1, you are responsible for your own happiness. Number 2, the majority of your limits are self-imposed. Number 3, you can never fully prepare for everything life will throw at you. Number 4, you will mess up. The best thing you can do is learn from it and move on. Number 5, your loved ones will not be around you forever. Cherish them.
Yeah.
That's
That's
powerful.
powerful.
That's good.
So, we hope you have enjoyed it. And we are done for this episode. Thank you, Adam, for being with us.
Thank you
and
for
we
having
hope
me.
thank you for the information and the lesson that you've given us so far. And we really look forward to have you to the next to another episode. So, Taylor, what would you say for the last one?
Definitely want to thank you for your time. Every time I sit down and talk to you, my brain is always exploding with knowledge. But it's definitely an honor. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
So,
thanks for having us on.
good
We appreciate you.
conversation.
See you to the next episode.